The sunlight cut through the blinds like knives, forcing Andrew to open his eyes. His head throbbed with each heartbeat, and his mouth felt like sandpaper. He blinked several times, trying to piece together what had happened last night. The digital clock on the nightstand showed 11:42 a.m. He never slept this late. Andrew turned to his wife's side of the bed. Empty. The sheets were cold and undisturbed, as if no one had slept there. Maybe she'd gotten up early, as she sometimes did on weekends, to go jogging or meet friends for breakfast. "Beth?" he called out, his voice scratchy and unfamiliar to his own ears. No answer came back through the quiet house. He sat up slowly, wincing as the room spun around him. How much had he drunk last night? The memories were foggy, coming in bits and pieces like a badly tuned radio station. There had been an argument. He remembered raised voices, but not what they had said. They'd been fighting more often lately, about little things that somehow became big things. "Beth?" he called again, louder this time. The silence that followed felt heavy, wrong somehow. Andrew swung his legs over the side of the bed and noticed he was still fully dressed in yesterday's clothes, jeans and a button-up shirt now wrinkled beyond repair. His shoes were off, at least, placed neatly by the bedroom door. That was strange. Beth was the neat one, always picking up after him. Had she taken his shoes off while he was passed out? The bathroom door was open, the light off. No sign of her there. Andrew stumbled to his feet, fighting against his hangover, and made his way down the hallway. The hardwood floor felt cold against his bare feet. "Honey? Are you making coffee?" No sound of the coffee maker. No morning news playing on the kitchen TV. Just silence. As he moved through the hallway, something caught his eye. A picture frame lay on the floor, the glass cracked across the middle. It was their wedding photo, the one Beth had specially framed. He picked it up carefully, avoiding the broken glass. Why was it on the floor? Beth treasured this picture. In the living room, more things seemed out of place. The cushions on the couch were askew, and a small vase that usually sat on the coffee table was now in pieces on the floor, dried flowers scattered around it. Had they knocked it over during their fight? Andrew's stomach tightened. The fight must have been worse than he thought. But why couldn't he remember it clearly? He checked the kitchen next. The dishes from dinner were still in the sink, and 2 wine glasses sat on the counter. One empty, one with a small amount of red wine still in it. Next to them stood the empty wine bottle. Andrew opened the refrigerator, hoping to find some orange juice to soothe his parched throat. As he reached for the carton, he noticed a sticky note on the fridge door that hadn't been there yesterday. "Don't forget dinner with the Wilsons. 7 p.m. That was it. They had been getting ready to go to their neighbor's house for dinner. Beth had been excited about it all week. But something had happened before they left. What was it? Andrew's phone buzzed from somewhere in the house. He followed the sound back to the bedroom, finding his phone on the floor, partially hidden under the bed. The screen showed 7 missed calls from Rose, Beth's older sister. The last call had come in just 5 minutes ago. Before he could decide whether to call her back, he noticed something else. A small reddish-brown smudge on the white wall of the hallway, about shoulder height. He touched it with his finger. It was dry but came off slightly on his skin. "Was that blood, Beth?" he called again, his voice sharper, now edged with worry. "Are you here?" He moved faster through the house, checking the guest bedroom, the office, even looking outside in the backyard. No sign of her car in the driveway either. Had she left? Gone to her sister's place after their fight? Back inside, Andrew noticed the basement door. It was closed, which was unusual. They typically kept it open for airflow. Even stranger, there was a padlock on it, his padlock from the garden shed, locked through the latch. Why would the basement be locked from this side? They never locked it. Beth used it as a craft room, and he kept his tools down there. Had he locked it last night? Why would he do that? A flash of memory hit him. Beth's face, eyes wide with fear, backing away from him down the hallway. His own voice, louder than he'd ever heard it, saying things he'd never say. Her crying, begging him to calm down. Andrew's hands trembled as he looked for the key to the padlock. He couldn't find it in his pockets. After searching frantically, he spotted a small key on top of the hallway bookshelf, placed carefully, deliberately. He grabbed it and fumbled with the lock, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. The lock clicked open. Andrew removed it slowly, as if afraid of what might happen next. He turned the knob and pulled the door open. The basement stairs disappeared into darkness below. "Beth?" he called down, his voice echoing slightly. "Are you down there?" He flicked the light switch, but nothing happened. The bulb must have burned out. Or had someone unscrewed it? Andrew felt along the wall for the flashlight they kept on a hook for power outages. It wasn't there. Using his phone's flashlight, he took the first step down. The wooden stair creaked under his weight. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing only their normal basement, washing machine, dryer, storage boxes, Beth's craft table. As he descended further, the smell hit him metallic and wrong. His phone buzzed again in his hand, startling him so badly he nearly fell down the remaining stairs. It was Rose calling again. For some reason, he didn't want to answer. Not yet. Not until he knew what was in the basement. Not until he found Beth. At the bottom of the stairs, Andrew swung the phone's light around the room. Everything looked normal at first glance until the light passed over the area behind the stairs. Dark stains on the concrete floor, scratches on the wall, and Beth's favorite scarf, the blue one he'd given her for her birthday, crumpled in the corner. Andrew's legs gave out, and he sat heavily on the bottom step. Another memory flashed. Beth wearing that scarf last night, pulling it tighter around her neck as she backed away from him. The wine bottle in his hand, not to pour another glass, but raised like... His phone buzzed again. Rose. With shaking hands, he finally answered. "Hello?" His voice sounded strange, distant. "Andrew? Thank goodness. I've been trying to reach you for hours. Is Beth with you?" Rose sounded worried, her words coming fast. "No," Andrew said, staring at the dark stains on his basement floor. "She's not here." "What do you mean she's not there?" "She was supposed to call me after your dinner with the neighbors. She always calls on Sundays." "I'm worried sick. Sunday." "It was Sunday." "That meant last night was Saturday. The dinner with the Wilsons. We didn't make it to the dinner," Andrew said slowly, another piece of memory clicking into place. "We had a fight." Rose was quiet for a moment. "What kind of fight, Andrew?" He couldn't answer. The phone light illuminated something else now. A dent in the drywall at the bottom of the stairs and more of those dark stains around it. "Andrew?" Rose's voice grew sharp. "What happened last night? Where is my sister?" In that moment, looking at the stains on his basement floor, at Beth's scarf thrown in the corner, at the dent in the wall exactly at head height, Andrew realized what he had done. The phone slipped from his hand, clattering on the concrete floor. Even from there, he could hear Rose shouting his name, demanding answers he couldn't give. Because how could he tell her that in a drunken rage he had done the unthinkable to the woman he had promised to love and protect? How could he admit that somewhere in this house was proof of what he had become? And where was Beth now? Andrew's hands shook as he picked up his phone from the basement floor. Rose was still shouting through the speaker. "Andrew, answer me, what's going on?" He pressed the phone to his ear, struggling to find his voice. "I don't know, Rose. We had a fight, and now I can't find her. Her car is gone. What were you fighting about?" Rose's voice was sharp with worry. Andrew closed his eyes, trying to remember. Images flashed in his mind. Beth's phone lighting up with a message, him grabbing it from her hand, reading something that made his stomach drop. "There were messages on her phone," he said slowly. "From someone named Chris." "Chris?" Rose sounded confused. Her coworker Chris? The one planning the office party? Another fragment of memory. Beth trying to explain, showing him more messages about catering and guest lists, but he hadn't wanted to hear it. The wine had already clouded his judgment by then. "I think I accused her of cheating." Shame washed over him as he said the words. "I wasn't thinking straight. I'd been drinking." "You idiot," Rose hissed. "She was helping plan a surprise party for your anniversary. Chris is her boss's husband. He owns that catering company you like." The revelation hit Andrew like a physical blow. Their 5th anniversary was next weekend. Beth had been acting secretive lately, taking phone calls in other rooms, quickly changing screens when he walked by. He had let his insecurity twist it all into something ugly. "I'm coming over," Rose said firmly. "Don't touch anything. Don't call anyone. Just wait for me." The line went dead. Andrew stood in the dim basement, his phone light casting strange shadows. He turned slowly, examining the space more carefully. The stains on the floor, were they really blood? He crouched down, touching one with his fingertip. It was dry, slightly tacky. Next to Beth's scarf, he noticed something else. A small earring, one of her favorites. The pearl one he'd given her last Christmas. The memory of that happy morning seemed from another lifetime now. Andrew climbed the stairs on unsteady legs, closing the basement door behind him. He needed to clean up. He needed to think. In the bathroom, he splashed cold water on his face and stared at his reflection. His eyes were bloodshot, dark circles beneath them. A scratch ran along his left cheek. Had Beth fought back? He lifted his shirt and found bruises on his ribs, as if he'd fallen or been hit with something. He changed his clothes, throwing yesterday's outfit into the hamper, then set about straightening the house. He picked up the broken picture frame, carefully placing the wedding photo on the mantel. He swept up the broken vase, rearranged the couch cushions, and wiped away the smudge on the hallway wall. All the while his mind raced. What had happened after their fight? Where was Beth now? His phone buzzed with a text message. For a wild moment he hoped it was from Beth, but it was Rose again, 20 minutes away. Don't do anything stupid. Andrew went to the kitchen and made coffee, going through the motions automatically. As the coffee brewed, he noticed something on the counter he'd missed before. Beth's car keys sitting in their usual spot by the fruit bowl. If her keys were here, how had she left? Had someone picked her up? He checked the garage. Her car was there, parked neatly beside his. Cold fear washed over him. If she hadn't driven away, where was she? The doorbell rang, making him jump. Rose stood on the porch, her face tight with worry. She pushed past him without waiting for an invitation. Where did you last see her? She demanded, dropping her purse on the entry table. Here, in the living room, I think. We were arguing. Rose looked around the now tidy space. The house looks fine. I cleaned up a bit, he admitted, her eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? If she's missing, you don't clean up, you leave everything for the police to see. The police? Andrew's voice cracked. I was hoping she'd just gone out, maybe to cool off. Without her car or her phone? Rose held up Beth's phone. I found it in your front yard when I pulled up. The screen is shattered. Andrew took the phone, staring at the cracked glass. Another memory surfaced. Beth trying to call someone during their fight, him knocking the phone from her hand. Had he thrown it outside? He couldn't remember. Andrew, Rose said, her voice deadly calm. I need you to tell me exactly what you remember about last night. Every detail. They sat at the kitchen table, steam rising from their untouched coffee cups. Andrew closed his eyes, trying to pull the fragments together. We were getting ready for dinner at the Wilsons'. Beth was excited. She'd bought a new dress. I started drinking early, while she was in the shower. When she came out, she was checking her phone, smiling at something. I asked who she was texting, and she said it was work stuff. He swallowed hard. I'd had maybe 3 glasses of wine by then. I didn't believe her. When she went to get dressed, I checked her phone. There were messages from Chris about meeting up, keeping secrets from me. I didn't read the whole thread, just enough to make me angry. Rose nodded, urging him to continue. When she came back, I confronted her. She tried to explain, but I was too drunk to listen. We started yelling. I remember her crying, telling me I was being ridiculous. I grabbed her phone again and she tried to take it back. That's when He trailed off. When you what? Rose pressed. I pushed her. Not hard, just enough to keep her away from the phone. She knocked into the coffee table. That's probably when the vase broke. After that, things get really blurry. I remember her backing away from me toward the hallway. She was saying she was going to call you to come get her. Rose's face had gone pale. And then? Andrew shook his head. I don't know. The next clear memory I have is waking up this morning. They sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Rose spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to call the police, Andrew. But what if... He couldn't finish the sentence. What if he'd done something terrible? What if Beth was hurt or worse? If she's just cooling off somewhere, fine. But her car is here, her phone is broken, and there are stains in your basement that you haven't explained. Just then, Andrew's phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered it hesitantly. Mr. Parker. A man's voice, formal and serious. This is Detective Huang with the County Police Department. We're calling about your wife, Elizabeth Parker. Andrew's heart stopped. What about her? We'd like to speak with you in person, sir. I'm on my way to your residence now. Please remain at home. The call ended. Andrew looked at Rose, his face ashen. The police are coming. They know something about Beth. Rose grabbed her own phone. I'm calling my husband. You need someone on your side right now. As she stepped away to make the call, Andrew wandered back to the hallway, staring at the basement door. What would the police find down there? What had he done in his drunken rage? Another flash of memory. Beth at the top of the basement stairs, backing away from him. The sound of her voice pleading. "Andrew, stop! You're scaring me!" Had he followed her down there? Had they struggled near the stairs? The dent in the wall, the stains on the floor. The evidence pointed to something unthinkable. Andrew slid down the wall, sitting on the floor with his head in his hands. In the distance, he heard sirens approaching. In a few minutes, they would be here, asking questions he couldn't answer, looking for a wife he couldn't find, and somewhere in the locked-away parts of his mind lay the truth of what had happened in this house last night. A truth he wasn't sure he could bear to face. Rose returned, her face grim. "My husband will meet us at the police station. Andrew, listen to me carefully. Don't volunteer information. Answer their questions directly, but don't elaborate, and for God's sake, don't tell them you cleaned up the house." The sirens grew louder, then stopped. Car doors slammed outside. "It's going to be okay," Rose said, but her voice lacked conviction. "We're going to find Beth." Andrew looked up at her, his eyes hollow with fear and guilt. "What if we already know where she is?" he whispered, glancing toward the basement door. "What if I did something terrible, Rose?" Before she could answer, a heavy knock sounded at the front door. The police had arrived, and with them, the moment when Andrew would have to face whatever truth lay hidden in the shadows of his mind. The living room felt too small with Detective Huang and Officer Patel sitting across from Andrew. Rose sat beside him on the couch, her presence both comforting and terrifying. What if they accused him of something? What if they found evidence he couldn't explain? "Mr. Parker?" Detective Huang began, his voice measured and calm. "When was the last time you saw your wife?" Andrew glanced at Rose before answering. "Last night. We were supposed to go to a neighbor's house for dinner, but we had an argument." What time was this argument? Andrew thought back. "Around 7 p.m. We were supposed to be at the Wilsons by 7:30. Detective Huang made a note in his small black notebook. "And what was the argument about?" Andrew swallowed hard. "I misunderstood some text messages on her phone. I thought she was..." He couldn't finish the sentence. He thought Beth was cheating. Rose cut in. "But she wasn't. She was planning a surprise for their anniversary." The detective nodded without judgment. "And after this argument, what happened?" "I don't remember clearly," Andrew admitted. "I'd been drinking. Things are blurry." "How much had you had to drink, Mr. Parker?" "A bottle of wine, maybe more." "I started early." Officer Patel spoke up for the first time. "Do you often drink that much, sir?" Andrew felt defensive. "No, just sometimes when I'm stressed. Work has been difficult lately." "I see." Detective Huang flipped a page in his notebook. "The reason we're here, Mr. Parker, is that a woman matching your wife's description was seen at the bus station late last night. The security guard on duty reported that she seemed distressed and had visible bruising on her face and arms." Andrew felt the blood drain from his face. "Bruising?" "Yes. When he approached to ask if she needed help, she declined and boarded the midnight bus to Clayton City." "Clayton City. Beth's parents lived there, about 3 hours away. Had she fled to them after their fight? Did she arrive there?" Rose asked, leaning forward. "Have you contacted her parents?" "We've been unable to reach them so far," Officer Patel said. But the bus company confirmed she purchased a ticket and boarded. Relief washed over Andrew like a wave. Beth was alive. She had left of her own accord. But then confusion set in. If Beth had taken the bus, why was her car still in the garage? And what about the stains in the basement? As if reading his thoughts, Detective Huang said, "Mr. Parker, we'd like to take a look around your house if you don't mind." It wasn't really a request. Andrew nodded, standing on shaky legs. "Of course. I'd like to show you something first," Detective Huang said, pulling out his phone. The security footage from the bus station. He pressed play and turned the screen toward Andrew. The footage was grainy but clear enough. There was Beth, her face partly hidden by her hair, standing at the ticket counter. She wore a coat Andrew didn't recognize, and she kept her head down as she paid for her ticket. She did appear to be moving stiffly, one arm held protectively across her body. "That's her," Andrew whispered. "But I don't understand why she didn't take her car." "Perhaps she was concerned about her ability to drive safely," Detective Huang suggested. "Or perhaps she was worried about being followed." The implication hung heavy in the air. Andrew had no response. The officers began their walkthrough of the house, starting with the kitchen. Andrew and Rose followed at a distance. When they reached the hallway with the basement door, Andrew felt his heart rate spike. "What's down here?" Officer Patel asked, her hand on the doorknob. "The basement," Andrew said, his mouth dry. "Laundry room, storage, Beth's craft area." The officer opened the door and flicked the light switch. Nothing happened. "Bulb's out," she noted. "It was working fine last week," Rose said, giving Andrew a strange look. Detective Huang pulled out a flashlight. "Let's take a look." The three of them followed the officers down the creaking stairs. Andrew's mind raced. What would they make of the stains on the floor? The dent in the wall? Beth's scarf and earring? But when the flashlight beam swept the basement floor, Andrew blinked in confusion. The stains he'd seen earlier were gone. The floor was clean, with no sign of the dark patches he'd noticed that morning. The dent in the wall was still there, but it looked old, not fresh. Beth's scarf and earring were nowhere to be seen. "Something wrong, Mr. Parker?" Detective Huang asked, noticing Andrew's bewildered expression. "No, The light usually works." He couldn't make sense of it. Had he imagined the stains? The scarf? Was his guilty conscience creating evidence that wasn't there? After a thorough search of the basement and the rest of the house, the officers returned to the living room. They had found nothing suspicious. "We'll continue trying to reach your in-laws," Detective Huang told Andrew. "In the meantime, if your wife contacts you, please let us know immediately." "Of course," Andrew agreed. As the officers prepared to leave, Detective Huang paused. "One more thing, Mr. Parker, those scratches on your face, how did you get them?" Andrew's hand went to his cheek. He hadn't thought of an explanation. "I'm not sure. Maybe during the argument, or I could have scratched myself in my sleep. I don't remember." The detective studied him for a long moment, then handed him a card. "Call if you remember anything else, or if those memories of yours start to clear up." After they left, Rose rounded on Andrew. "What was that about? You looked like you'd seen a ghost down in the basement." "There were stains on the floor this morning," Andrew said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dark stains that looked like blood. And Beth's scarf was there and her pearl earring. Now they're gone." Rose stared at him. "Are you sure? Or was it just the hangover? Your guilty conscience playing tricks?" "I don't know anymore." Andrew sank onto the couch, head in his hands. "But if Beth took the bus to her parents' house, why would there be blood in our basement?" "It doesn't make sense." Rose sat beside him. "What doesn't make sense is that the basement looks clean now. If someone cleaned it, it wasn't me, and the police just got here." A terrible thought occurred to Andrew. "Unless I cleaned it this morning and don't remember doing it, that's not possible. You answered my calls. You were upstairs when I arrived. When would you have had time?" Before Andrew could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. "Unknown number." He opened it with trembling fingers. "Why did you tell them I took the bus?" "You know I didn't." Andrew showed the message to Rose, his face pale. "It's from Beth's number, but her phone is broken. It's right here." He pointed to the shattered phone on the coffee table. Rose frowned. "Maybe she has her work phone with her." Another text came through. "You won't find me. Stop looking." "This isn't right," Andrew muttered. "This doesn't sound like Beth." He tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. Not Beth's voice, just the automated system. He texted back, "Beth, please, where are you?" "Are you safe?" "I'm so sorry about last night," the response came immediately. "You should be sorry. You know what you did." Andrew felt sick. What had he done? Why couldn't he remember? "I'm calling the detective," Rose said, reaching for her phone. "This isn't right." Just then, Andrew's phone rang, the unknown number again. He answered it on speaker. "Beth? Is that you?" Silence on the other end. Just the sound of breathing. Then a whisper, so quiet they almost missed it. "The basement. You know where to look," the call ended. Andrew and Rose stared at each other in horror. "We need to go back down there," Andrew said, standing up. "Something's not right." Rose shook her head. "The police just searched it. There's nothing there. They didn't know what to look for." Andrew was already heading for the basement door, a strange calm settling over him. "I think I do." This time Andrew brought a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. The beam was stronger than his phone light, revealing details he'd missed before. The basement looked clean at first glance, but as he moved the light slowly across the concrete floor, he noticed something odd, a slight difference in color near the water heater, as if the floor had been recently scrubbed. "Andrew, this is crazy," Rose said from the bottom of the stairs. "What are we looking for?" Andrew didn't answer. He was focused on the water heater now, on the small space behind it. Something was tucked there, barely visible. He reached in and pulled out a plastic bag tied tightly at the top. "What is that?" Rose asked, stepping closer. Andrew opened the bag. Inside were Beth's scarf and pearl earring soaked in what looked like blood. Also in the bag was a small key, the spare key to Beth's car. "I don't understand," Andrew whispered. "I didn't put these here. Then who did?" Rose asked, her voice shaking. Before Andrew could answer, his phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "Now you know. What will you do about it?" Andrew looked from the phone to the bloody items in his hands, a cold realization dawning. Either someone was playing an elaborate, twisted game with him, or he had done something terrible to his wife and truly couldn't remember it. Rose insisted on calling Detective Huang back. She took photos of the bloody items with her phone before making the call, her hands shaking so badly she had to try 3 times to unlock her screen. "Don't touch anything else," she told Andrew, who stood frozen, staring at the bag in his hands. While Rose spoke with the detective in hushed tones by the stairs, Andrew tried to make sense of what was happening. The police had searched the basement less than an hour ago and found nothing. Now suddenly here was evidence that something terrible had happened to Beth. Evidence that implicated him. But who had hidden it behind the water heater? And who was sending those text messages from Beth's number when her phone was broken? "They're on their way back," Rose said, ending the call. The detective sounded concerned. "Did you tell him about the texts?" Rose nodded. "He's going to try to trace the number." Andrew's phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "They won't believe you. They'll think you did it." He showed Rose the screen. "How would Beth know the police are coming back? Unless she's watching us somehow." Rose glanced around the basement nervously. "This doesn't make sense." "None of it does." "Let's go back upstairs," Andrew suggested, suddenly feeling exposed in the dim basement. "I don't want to be down here anymore." They waited in the kitchen, the bloody items placed carefully on the table in their plastic bag. Neither spoke much. Rose made coffee they didn't drink. Andrew kept checking his phone, but no more messages came through. The wait for the police felt endless. Andrew's mind raced with possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. Had he hurt Beth during their argument? Had she fled to the bus station afterward? But then who was sending the texts? And why would she direct him to find evidence that could incriminate him, unless it wasn't Beth texting him at all? "Rose," he said suddenly, "what if someone else has Beth's number? What if someone is trying to frame me?" Rose looked skeptical. "Who would do that?" "I don't know. Maybe someone who wants to hurt me, or Beth, or both of us." "That seems far-fetched," Rose said. "More likely is that Beth is using another phone, maybe borrowing someone else's." But Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going on, something beyond a simple domestic dispute. The doorbell rang at last. Detective Huang and Officer Patel had returned, along with another officer Andrew didn't recognize. Their expressions were grave as they entered the kitchen and saw the plastic bag on the table. "You found this after we left?" Detective Huang asked, pulling on latex gloves before examining the contents. "Yes," Andrew answered. "Behind the water heater. And you're certain it wasn't there during our initial search?" "I didn't see it," Officer Patel said. "But it was dark down there and we didn't move the appliances." Detective Huang carefully placed the items into an evidence bag. "Mr. Parker, we need to ask you some difficult questions. Would you prefer to do this at the station?" Andrew felt a chill run through him. "Am I under arrest?" "Not at this time. We're still gathering information." "Then I'd prefer to stay here," Andrew said, glancing at Rose for support. The questioning was grueling. They went over the events of the previous night again and again. What exactly had he and Beth argued about? Had the argument turned physical? How had he gotten the scratches on his face? Why couldn't he remember crucial details? Had he ever been violent with Beth before? To this last question, Andrew answered emphatically, "Never. I've never hurt her. I would never hurt her." "Your neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, says differently," Detective Huang said. "She reported hearing shouting from your house on multiple occasions. And 2 months ago, she saw Beth with bruises on her arm that Beth claimed came from bumping into a door." Andrew stared at him in shock. "That's not Beth did walk into a door. We were moving furniture, and she wasn't looking where she was going." "Ask her yourself." "We're trying to, Mr. Parker. That's the problem." Officer Patel showed Andrew the text messages from the unknown number, which Rose had forwarded to them. Do you have any idea who might be sending these if not your wife? Andrew shook his head helplessly. It has to be Beth. Or someone who has her phone, her real phone, not this broken one. We're working on tracing the number, Detective Huang said. In the meantime, I need to ask you a direct question, Mr. Parker. Did you harm your wife last night? Andrew looked him straight in the eye. Not that I remember, but there are gaps in my memory. I was drunk. Would you consent to a search of your vehicles? The question caught Andrew off guard. My car? Yes, of course. And your wife's car? Yes, it's in the garage. The officers stepped outside to make a call, leaving Andrew and Rose alone again. They think I did something terrible, Andrew whispered. Maybe I did. Maybe I hurt her badly and can't remember. Stop it, Rose snapped. Until we know what happened, don't admit to anything. Andrew's phone buzzed again. Another text. Check the trunk. Cold dread washed over him. The trunk of Beth's car, he said, showing Rose the message. They're going to search it. Before Rose could respond, the officers returned. Mr. Parker, we'd like to look at your wife's car now. Andrew led them to the garage, his heart pounding so hard he could barely breathe. What would they find in the trunk? What had he done? Beth's blue sedan sat exactly where it always did, neatly parked alongside Andrew's SUV. Detective Huang asked for the keys, which Andrew retrieved from the kitchen. The garage fell silent as the detective approached the car, clicked the key fob and lifted the trunk lid. Andrew couldn't see past the officers' bodies, couldn't tell what they were looking at. But he saw Detective Huang's shoulders stiffen, heard Officer Patel's sharp intake of breath. Mr. Parker, Detective Huang said, his voice suddenly formal. I need you to step back inside the house. What is it? Andrew tried to move forward. What's in there? Officer Patel blocked his path. Sir, please go back inside now. Rose managed to peek around them. Her face went pale. Oh my God, she whispered. What? Andrew demanded. Tell me what's in there. Blood, Rose said, her voice barely audible. The trunk liner is soaked with blood. The next hour passed in a blur. More police arrived. The garage became a crime scene. Andrew sat at his kitchen table, numb with shock, as officers moved through his house, taking photos, collecting samples, searching for more evidence. Detective Huang informed him that they were obtaining a warrant to formally arrest him on suspicion of foul play. Until then, he was not to leave the house. I don't understand, Andrew kept saying. I don't remember putting anything in her trunk. I don't remember hurting her. Memory issues aren't uncommon in situations of extreme stress or trauma, Detective Huang said, almost gently. Sometimes the mind protects itself by blocking out the worst moments. Andrew's phone buzzed yet again. He almost didn't want to look, but he forced himself to check the message. Go to the woods behind your house. Follow the old hiking trail. You'll find what you're looking for. He showed it to Detective Huang, who immediately organized a search team. Rose was asked to stay at the house with Andrew and 2 officers while the detective and the rest of the team explored the woods. This is insane, Rose said once they were alone in the living room. This can't be happening. Andrew had no response. He felt detached from reality, as if he were watching someone else's life fall apart. Had he really hurt Beth? Had he hidden her body in the woods behind their house? Was he capable of such a thing? The more he thought about it, the more disturbing gaps he found in his memory, not just from last night, but from other nights when he'd been drinking. Times when he'd woken up confused, with Beth acting nervous around him. Times when she'd made excuses not to go out, to stay home, to avoid their friends. Had he been hurting her all along and somehow forcing himself to forget? Darkness fell as they waited for news from the search team. Andrew dozed off on the couch, exhaustion finally overcoming his anxiety. He dreamed of Beth, of her backing away from him in fear, of his hands reaching for her. He awoke with a start to find Detective Huang standing over him, his expression unreadable. Mr. Parker, he said, we need you to come with us. We found something in the woods. Andrew stood on shaky legs. What did you find? The detective didn't answer directly. We need you to identify it. They drove in silence to the edge of the woods where flashlights bobbed in the darkness and police tape cordoned off a section of the hiking trail. Andrew was led through the trees, following a path he and Beth had walked many times before. About half a mile in, the officers stopped. A small clearing had been turned into another crime scene, bright lights illuminating the area. Several officers stood around something on the ground, something Andrew couldn't quite make out at first. As they got closer, He realized it was a shallow hole, freshly dug. Beside it lay a shovel, his shovel from their garden shed. The hole was empty. "I don't understand," Andrew said, looking around in confusion. "What am I supposed to identify?" Detective Huang pointed to the ground around the hole. "Do you recognize these, Mr. Parker?" Andrew looked closer. Scattered around the disturbed earth were small items: Beth's hairbrush, her favorite lipstick, a bracelet he had given her for Christmas, and a note, written in what looked like Beth's handwriting. "You'll never find all of me." The holding cell was cold and smelled of bleach. Andrew sat on the thin mattress staring at the blank wall opposite him. They had arrested him formally after finding the empty grave, charging him with suspected foul play in the disappearance of his wife. No bail had been set yet. He would see a judge in the morning. Rose had called her husband, who knew a decent lawyer. The lawyer was supposed to meet with Andrew before the hearing, but Andrew wasn't sure what good it would do. The evidence against him was overwhelming, even if he couldn't remember doing any of it. The scratches on his face, the blood in Beth's car trunk, the freshly dug grave with her belongings scattered around it. And most damning of all, his own spotty memory of that night, full of gaps he couldn't explain. The cell door opened, and Detective Huang entered with a folder in his hand. "Mr. Parker," he said, pulling up the single chair in the room. "We need to talk." Andrew looked up, exhaustion written across his face. "Have you found her?" "Not yet, but we found something else interesting." He opened the folder and laid out several photographs. "Do you recognize this man?" Andrew looked at the grainy security camera image. It showed a man at a hardware store buying what looked like a shovel and some rope. The man wore a baseball cap pulled low over his face, but the profile was clearly visible. "That's me," Andrew said, confused. "Where did you get this?" "It was taken yesterday at 4:37 p.m. at the hardware store on Main Street." "You purchased a shovel, 50 feet of rope, a tarp, and a box of trash bags. Do you remember doing this?" Andrew stared at the image, his mind racing. "No, that's not possible. I was home all day yesterday getting ready for dinner at the Wilsons. The clerk remembers you. Says you seemed perfectly normal, even chatted about the weather." "It wasn't me," Andrew insisted, but doubt crept into his voice. The man in the photo looked exactly like him. Same build, same profile, same clothes he often wore on weekends. "Mr. Parker, I've been a detective for 15 years. In that time, I've seen plenty of criminals who genuinely don't remember their crimes. Sometimes alcohol is involved, sometimes drugs. Sometimes it's a psychological break, the mind protecting itself from the horror of what the body has done." Andrew shook his head. "I didn't hurt Beth, I couldn't have." Then explain the evidence. "Explain the grave you dug, explain the blood in her car." "I can't," Andrew whispered. "But that doesn't mean I did it," the detective sighed. "We've been trying to reach your in-laws in Clayton City. They finally called back an hour ago. They haven't seen or heard from Beth in weeks. There was no midnight bus arrival. The woman on that security footage wasn't your wife." Andrew looked up sharply. "What, but you showed me the video." "It was Beth at the bus station. We thought so too at first, but on closer examination, the height and build are wrong. The woman in that footage is at least 3 inches shorter than your wife, and your in-laws confirmed Beth has no coat like the one that woman was wearing." "Then who was it?" Detective Huang shrugged. "We don't know yet, but it seems someone went to a lot of trouble to make us think your wife fled town after your fight." Andrew's mind reeled. If Beth hadn't taken the bus, where was she? And who was the woman at the station? Who had been sending those text messages? "There's something else," Detective Huang said, pulling out another photograph. This one showed a close-up of the note found at the gravesite. "You said this looks like your wife's handwriting." "Our preliminary analysis suggests otherwise. It's a good imitation, but not genuine." Andrew stared at the photo. "Someone is framing me. Someone who knows us, knows our lives, knows about our fight." "That's one theory," the detective agreed. "The other is that you're an extremely clever man who's creating an elaborate cover story." "By framing myself?" Andrew asked incredulously. "It wouldn't be the first time. Some killers are extraordinarily calculating." A thought struck Andrew suddenly. "My phone. The text messages. Have you traced them?" "We're still working on that. The number is registered to a burner phone paid for with cash. No way to track who purchased it." Andrew leaned forward urgently. "Check the cell towers. See where the messages were sent from. If they came from somewhere I couldn't have been, that proves someone else is involved." The detective studied him for a long moment. I'll look into it. In the meantime, try to get some rest. You'll need it for tomorrow." After Detective Huang left, Andrew lay back on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. His mind kept going back to that night, trying to piece together what had happened after the argument. He remembered Beth backing away from him, frightened. He remembered feeling rage unlike anything he'd felt before, but he couldn't remember hurting her, couldn't imagine doing such a thing no matter how angry he was. Yet the evidence suggested otherwise. Andrew must have dozed off, because the next thing he knew, the cell door was opening again. This time it was Officer Patel, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Parker, come with me, please." "What time is it?" he asked groggily. "Just after 3 a.m. Detective Huang wants to see you." She led him down the hallway to an interview room where the detective waited, looking tired but alert. "Sit down." "Mr. Parker," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Something's happened." Andrew's heart raced. "Did you find Beth?" "In a manner of speaking. 10 minutes ago, the front desk received a phone call. A woman claiming to be your wife. She refused to give her location but insisted she was alive and well. She said she's been staying at a motel outside of town." "Was it really her? Did you record the call?" "We did." Detective Huang pressed a button on a small recorder. Beth's voice filled the room, unmistakable despite the poor quality of the recording. "My name is Elizabeth Parker. I'm calling to let you know I'm safe. I left my husband after our fight on Saturday night. I've been staying at the Pine Ridge Motel, room 12. I'm not ready to come home yet, but I don't want Andrew arrested for something he didn't do." Andrew felt tears spring to his eyes. "That's her. That's Beth." Then confusion set in. "But the blood, the grave, all of it." "That's what we need to figure out," Detective Huang said. "We've sent officers to the motel, but I wanted to talk to you first. If your wife is alive and well, then what exactly happened in your house that night?" Andrew shook his head. "I don't know. I honestly don't know. Think, Mr. Parker, who would want to frame you for your wife's murder? Who stands to gain from destroying your life?" Andrew thought about it. "I can't think of anyone who hates me that much. I'm just an ordinary guy. I work in accounting. I don't have enemies. What about your wife? Does she have anyone who might want to hurt her by hurting you?" An ex-boyfriend came to mind, a man Beth had dated before Andrew. He had been obsessive, unwilling to let go even after Beth broke things off. But that was years ago. Surely he wouldn't still be holding a grudge. Before Andrew could answer, Officer Patel burst into the room. "Detective, we found her. She's at the station now." Andrew jumped to his feet. "Beth is here? Can I see her?" Detective Huang held up a hand. "Not yet. We need to talk to her first, understand what's been going on." The next hour was the longest of Andrew's life. He paced the small interview room, alternating between relief that Beth was alive and confusion about everything that had happened. None of it made sense. If Beth was fine, who had planted the blood evidence? Who had dug the grave? Who had sent those text messages? Finally, the door opened. Beth stood there looking tired and nervous but very much alive. No bruises, no injuries. She was wearing clothes Andrew didn't recognize, probably bought after she left. "Beth," he breathed, moving toward her. She stepped back, raising a hand to stop him. "Wait, Andrew. We need to talk first." Detective Huang guided Beth to a chair, then sat across from the couple. "Mrs. Parker has given us a very interesting statement. I think you should hear it directly from her." Beth took a deep breath. "Andrew, I left after our fight. I was upset and needed space. I got a room at that motel and turned off my phone. I was planning to call Rose in the morning, but then..." She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Then what?" Andrew prompted. "Then I saw you outside my motel room. At least I thought it was you. It looked exactly like you, standing in the parking lot, staring at my window. I was scared, so I stayed inside. When I looked again, you were gone." "That wasn't me," Andrew said. "I was home all night. I know that now. But at the time, I thought you had somehow followed me. It happened again the next day. I saw you in the diner across the street watching me. That's when I bought a new phone, a prepaid one, to call Rose. But when I did, she told me the police were at our house, that you'd reported me missing. That's when I realized something strange was happening." "Did you send me text messages?" Andrew asked. "About the basement, about the trunk of your car?" Beth looked confused. "No, my old phone broke during our fight, remember? You knocked it out of my hand." Detective Huang leaned forward. "Mrs. Parker, we found blood in your car trunk. A significant amount. Can you explain that?" Beth looked shocked. "Blood? No, that's not possible. I drove to the motel and my car was fine. I parked it behind the building where it wouldn't be easily seen from the road. Yet your car was in your garage when we searched the house, the detective pointed out. That's impossible, Beth insisted. My car should still be at the motel. Andrew and Detective Huang exchanged looks. Beth? Andrew said carefully. Your car has been in our garage the whole time. I saw it there myself, Beth shook her head. No, that's not right unless… She stopped, a look of realization crossing her face. Unless someone moved it. Someone who wanted you to think I never left. Or someone who wanted to plant evidence to frame Mr. Parker, Detective Huang added. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make it look like Andrew had harmed his wife, planting blood evidence, sending fake text messages, digging a grave, even impersonating Beth at the bus station. Mrs. Parker, Detective Huang said, Can you think of anyone who might want to hurt you or your husband this way? Beth hesitated, then nodded slowly. There's someone. My ex, David, he was unstable, possessive. After we broke up, he stalked me for months. He only stopped when I got a restraining order. David Henderson? The detective asked, making a note. Beth nodded. Yes, but that was 3 years ago before I even met Andrew. I haven't heard from him since. People with obsessive tendencies can hold grudges for years, Detective Huang said. And they often monitor their victims' lives from afar, waiting for an opportunity. Like a public fight between us, Andrew said quietly. Everyone at the restaurant saw us arguing last week. It was embarrassing. I stormed out and Beth followed me. We kept fighting in the parking lot. Anyone could have seen that and known there was trouble between you, the detective agreed. It might have seemed like the perfect time to strike. Beth reached across the table, taking Andrew's hand for the first time. I'm so sorry, Andrew. This is all my fault. If I hadn't gotten involved with David in the first place… This isn't your fault, Andrew interrupted. You couldn't have known he was still watching you. None of us could have. Detective Huang stood up. We need to find this David Henderson immediately. Mrs. Parker, we'll need a description. Any addresses you might remember. Places he frequented. As Beth provided the information, Andrew sat in stunned silence. The relief of knowing his wife was alive warred with the horror of realizing someone had been systematically trying to destroy their lives. Someone who had access to their home, who knew their routines, who could imitate both of them convincingly enough to fool witnesses. Someone who was still out there. 2 days later, Andrew and Beth stood in their living room, looking around uneasily. The police had found David Henderson hiding in a rental cabin just outside of town. In his possession were Beth's car keys, her broken phone, and receipts for the items used in the frame-up. He had been watching them for months, learning their habits, waiting for the right moment. The fight had given him the perfect opportunity. The blood in Beth's car trunk had come from a butcher shop where David had worked briefly. The woman at the bus station was a sex worker he had paid to impersonate Beth. The text messages, the planted evidence, the carefully orchestrated frame-up, all of it designed to destroy Andrew, to take away Beth's happiness since David couldn't have her himself. I don't know if I can stay here, Beth said, looking around their home with new eyes. Knowing he was in here, touching our things, planning all this. Andrew put his arm around her shoulders. We can move. Start fresh somewhere else. Beth leaned against him. I'm sorry I doubted you, even for a moment. When I saw who I thought was you outside the motel, I was afraid. It's okay, Andrew assured her. I doubted myself too. With all the evidence, the gaps in my memory. Part of me wondered if I'd actually hurt you and somehow blocked it out.